Today, America celebrates the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but due to numerous events that have taken place between last year and this year on both a national and local level, many feel mixed emotions today. Western Mass News reporter Kayla Burton joins us live in Springfield from the Martin Luther King Jr. Presbyterian Church on what this day means for some locally. Kayla?
Well, Chris, it was just a few weeks ago when this predominantly black church here behind me was set on fire. I spoke with President of the Greater Springfield NAACP, Bishop Talbert Swan, who tells me while today is extremely paramount, recognizing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all that he's done, it's also pretty frustrating, he says, knowing that all the changes that he's fought for is not being shown in today's society.
Today marks the birth of one of the bravest, noblest, most iconic heroes in the history of America, especially when it comes to pricking the moral conscience of a nation around issues of freedom, justice, and equality.
Across the nation on Monday, America recognizes Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a persistent fighter for freedom of people of color and a prominent leader against racial injustice. President of the Greater Springfield NAACP, Bishop Talbert Swan, says this day is not only significant for America to reflect on what Dr. King has done, but on the foundation America must build on today.
We take the time to reflect on the gift that God gave us through the birth of this man, but also to celebrate and focus on his life and his legacy, what he taught us, how he sacrificed for us, and the work that remains to be done to be true to his dream and to his legacy.
But Swan tells Western Mass News this year's MLK Day draws more emotions than ever before. Between the national and local racial injustices, he says, still goes on around him, including right here in Springfield.
The premier institution that represented and continues to represent Black America has always been the Black church. And so here we have, again, a Black church in our city that bears the name of Martin Luther King Jr. Being burned right in the middle of a time period of racial unrest and polarization in our nation.
Though it's been more than half a century since Dr. King stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, calling for freedom, equality, and fighting for social justice, Swan says his message for Americans today would be very similar.
In 2021, unfortunately, would have to repeat some of the very same things that he said in the 50s and in the 60s. We see some of the same elements that existed then as part of our contemporary society.
Swan also suggests that every American should ask themselves the same question that Dr. King once asked, which is, what is it that America has failed to hear when it comes to the struggle of people of color, as well as what is it that America continues to ignore? He says once they continue to ask themselves this question and also respond to this question, our country could be headed in a better direction. For now, live in Springfield, Kayla Burton, Western Mass News.